Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 292 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on what are false allegations. And it's Saturday, the 12th of October 2024 as I record this. So, today's podcast episode is a very exciting one because as much as I just love forensic psychology, we don't tend to focus on it much. And I'm sure actually if I went back on a few podcast episodes, I find out that I'm doing a little more than usual. To be honest, I know that's not true. Anyway, so false allegations. False allegations, you might not feel like that has anything to do with psychology, because it seriously isn't at first, because false allegations tend to focus on the legal system and they tend to impact the criminal justice system as a whole. But they are actually really interesting to psychologists, because here's the thing though, most false allegations are not false. They are actually things that happened, but the police, the criminal justice system, lots of other different facets of the system actually misclassifies very real crimes, very scary crimes, into false allegations. So why does that happen? And on the extremely few cases when someone actually does make a false allegation themselves, why do they do that? So this is actually quite a fascinating topic. I admit the title of the book was framed in a way to get people who would not believe this to get to read the book, just so they can learn the truth about false allegations. Because I know there's an extremely outrageous myth in our society that most sexual violence allegations are false, because they seriously aren't. Which is something that I want to show in this book, though, because I want to show that 99% of rape allegations are completely true, but because of the criminal justice system, most of them are marked as false allegations. So this is a fascinating podcast episode. We don't go into anything graphic, but this is just such an important episode that I'm really proud of. So you've got that to look forward to in the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one is, want to play better? Change your avatar's gender. If you've played any recent video games, chances are at some point you'll spend an inordinate amount of time customizing your character, tweaking clothing, facial features, and body builds that add new layers of enjoyment to the gaming experience and help us connect to the character that we, at least in some series, play a large role in creating. As well as changing how your avatar looks, many games now also give you the option of selecting your character's gender. As Kim Celine and colleagues from Nottingham Trent University explore in a new paper published in Entertainment Computing, this particular customization option can actually change how we behave in games, both for the better and for worse. Okay, so this is a fascinating idea, because I first came across this in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Flat out love that game. I love ancient Greece, and to be honest, I think it was the last decent Assassin's Creed game. I know lots of people didn't like it because there was a lot of forced world expansion, but it's ancient Greece. I was in my element. I love the Assassin's Creed series for allowing you to explore history, and unlike Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it actually had a storyline. Anyway, rant over. I just really don't like Assassin's Creed at the moment because they've ruined the series quite badly. Anyway, anyway though, so Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the first game that did allow you to choose your character's gender, and I was more than happy with that because it's just something that I like, and it does help you enjoy the game more. And I don't know, it's very hard to fit into the Ascribe because one, I don't really pay too much attention to it, but equally if there is a game that I can choose my agenda, well then I always do that quite happily. And I also think that this probably taps into the idea that we want to play people, we want to see people that represent ourselves. So I think that's very important. I'm really glad that games are allowing you to do it. And believe me, I know they're not doing this through altruism. I know they're doing it because people enjoy it more, so people play more of their games, and they can make more money. I know that's why they're doing it, but still, I think it's a very good idea that they are allowing you to do it. And if you're interested in cyber psychology, definitely check out the BPS Research Digest write-up. So the second one is the link between pollution and postpartum depression. 10% of people in Europe suffer from depression after giving birth, experiencing symptoms that include sadness, agitation, and difficulty concentrating. For such a common condition, postpartum depression has been relatively understudied by the authors of a new work in The Science of the Total Environment. In a bid to help address this, they ran a detailed study of one proposed risk factor, exposure to air pollution during pregnancy. Their analyses suggest that those who fell into the top quarter of levels of exposure to nitrous oxide, which comes from burning fossil fuel vehicles, or PM10s, tiny particles that can be inhaled, such as dust from factories and wildfires, during the second trimester of pregnancy, were almost 4 times more likely than those in the bottom quarter to develop postpartum depression, and that risk remains higher for the full 3 years of the study. Okay, so this is brilliant. Well, no, this is not a brilliant finding at all, but it's brilliant because it proves one of my points. One, this is a massive smack in the face against the biomedical model, because if the biomedical model was true, meaning that if depression and other mental health conditions were mainly caused by biological factors, these findings would not be real. So I'm really happy that we have got additional research that shows that environmental factors do actually play a role in the mental health conditions. Secondly, it's absolutely critical that governments, local authorities, and their councils do take air pollution a lot more seriously. For example, don't quote me on this because I've not looked it up, but I'm pretty sure that London is one of the most air polluted cities in Northern Europe, or something like that. I know London pollution, and especially in the underground, is absolutely horrific. So we've got to take this a lot more seriously. Yeah, because I'm a email subscriber to the World Health Organization. When they were doing their air pollution awareness bit, I looked up air pollution in my local area, and it's 3 times more polluted than the recommended average. So all of us live in really unhealthy air polluted cities, towns, and villages. So it's critical that we take this more seriously. And yes, there's actions we can take on the individual level. For example, walking more instead of driving everywhere. But governments, local authorities have got to do this a lot more seriously. And I think that this is the thing, though, about the world. We're all very interconnected because mental health you cannot separate from individuals, society, and the environment. So if we want to decrease the mental health burden on the NHS, Then we've got to look after the environment, look after our communities, look after society. So there's a lot of work to do, but even small actions can have massive difference. So just some food for thought. So the last one is, slap fighting athletes face high risk of concussion. Slap fighting is far less known than boxing, as well as some other sports that involve regular impacts to the head. But slap fighting competitions, in which two people stand opposite to each other and take in turns to deliver open hand strikes to their defenseless opponents' faces, are now drawing millions of online viewers following their debut in 2023. But the authors of a research letter to German surgery. According to their research, however, the activity is also dangerous, with 80% of participants showing concussion, injury to the brain, during their matches. And given the link between concussion in sports and ongoing or later neurological impairment, Raj Srilavi at the University of Pittsburgh and colleagues are concerned. I mean, of course they're concerned. I mean, that's quite horrific. I mean, like, why would you do this without any protection? Like, defenseless opponents. I mean, like, this is. I'm honestly shocked and quite speechless, which isn't rare at the moment because I go nonverbal at times for the past 2 nights. Oh my god! I mean, like, why would people do this? Okay. Deep breath. I think slap fighting, of course, has got to involve some more protection. Concussions are extremely dangerous because concussions do lead to increased risks of dementia and other dementia related diseases. But I mean, like, this is just shocking. I mean, like, people honestly just let others slap them as hard as they can. I mean, like, we know that's not healthy. Why would people do that? Okay then, I really can't add much more because I'm honestly so shocked. So, I hope you enjoyed the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So you probably heard there is now music in the intro and the outro of the podcast. And if I've got time, I will try and make some music segments that are little buffers, like we used to have in the podcast before my podcast distributor changed a bunch of stuff. So the reason why I've done that is, one, I absolutely love that music. I've been listening to it quite a lot, which is basically what I do. I find a new song, then I listen to it constantly until I get bored of it. So the reason why I've actually picked some music which I brought is because I've been developing YouTube Shorts. So, and I've also set myself a challenge. So from the 15th of October till New Year's Eve 2024, I will be releasing a short a day. So these are on YouTube, and these are on my YouTube channel, and the Psychology World podcast on YouTube. So the reason why I want to do this is because it's very fun. Shorts are very easy for me to make, and I can feel like I can be productive. And it's just another way of reusing my content to hopefully attract more wonderful listeners. So if you're listening, then I hope you enjoy it. Also, what I wanted to do was that on the psychology news section about 2 months ago, I covered that article which was about high tempo music in the background of YouTube shorts, or basically any short form content, can actually make it a lot more appealing, and people are more likely to listen to it. So that's basically the first time ever, after covering something from the psychology news section, that I've actually applied it to real life, which I'm quite pleased with, and it just shows that this podcast is really good for my own learning. Yeah, but then it just helps to make it sound cooler, I think. hopefully that's the vibe that you also get. So, in other news, this week has been extremely busy. I've been rushed off my feet. Mental health stuff has been a big impact too because I've gotten quite worse about eating, and eating disorders are genuinely not fun. And other stuff I'm not going to go into. But this week I've been working a lot on my PhD proposal. I had a meeting yesterday with an old friend who's talking to someone, and they basically said yeah, your PhD proposal is not actually possible because originally I wanted to create a brief psychological intervention for survivors of sexual violence, just they can have some sort of mental health support between their counselling assessment and their first counselling session, which can be 3.5 months, but it can be up to 6 months. That's the national UK average, or up to 1 year. And the reason why I wanted to do it was because my mental health just died in those 3.5 months that I had. So, and I think if I'd had some sort of support during that time, then my mental health would not be as bad as it is now. So, I wanted to do a brief psychological intervention, but logistically that can't happen. One, rape and other sexual violence is simply too traumatic. Um, that a brief psychological intervention won't work for it. Also, ethics will reject my application because it's too traumatic and it's too vulnerable. And also, there's no one at my university who's clinically trained enough to offer me supervision whilst I develop the brief psychological intervention. So basically, it just will not work, which is a bit annoying, and I think I'm sad about it, but I've not really processed it yet, because I was so distressed last night for other reasons. So it's a massive shame that I'm not going to do a PhD, but equally, I'm not sure if that was a trauma response or anything. So that's just something that I just wanted to share. But there's been lots of really good things about my week. For example, I actually went out for lunch. I actually went out for lunch with a brand new friend on Tuesday, and that was really good because at the moment, because my mental health fluctuates so much, I can't really go out and do stuff at certain times of the day, especially with new people, much less one-on-one. So thankfully, my best friend came because my best friend and this new friend went to the gym together. Thankfully, that went fine. So me and my new friend, we were just talking for a good few hours, and my best friend was just there in the corner, just on their phone, doing a PowerPoint presentation for one of their assignments. And it really worked. Worked though. I'm very happy that I was able to do that because it shows that I can make new friends, because at times I really doubt that just because I'm really, really bad at times. But counselings are going well and everything else. So overall, life is getting it and life is really good. Good though. And I'm actually working on a lot of really fun projects at the moment when I have time, including the YouTube short project, which I am honestly really excited about. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley, or leave a comment on the Facebook post or LinkedIn post. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by the Forensic Psychology of False Allegations, the forensic and criminal psychology of the false allegations of rape, sexual assault, and more. So this is a brilliant brand new book that was released last month, and I really enjoyed it. As I mentioned in the introduction, it helps us to answer a lot of really good questions. For example, why do people make false allegations? Which, to be honest, so few people do. Basically, no one actually makes false allegations. It's simply just the criminal justice system miscategorizing them, the police are not doing their job properly, and basically a lot of systemic issues which are quite horrific, but they're so interesting to read about because all these so-called false allegations actually feed into these really dangerous, really damaging myths. So it's a brilliant book. It's absolutely fascinating. If you love forensic psychology, you've got to read this really engaging and easy to understand book. I cannot recommend it enough. So that is Forensic Psychology of False Allegations, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. And if you want the audiobook narrated by artificial intelligence, now you can at selected audiobook retailers like Spotify, Google Play, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble, and selected library systems like Baker & Taylor, Overdrive, and the Biblioteca. So, whilst buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons because your support shows that you like the show and you want it to continue. So if you want to become a patron and get access to tons of great rewards, now you can at patreon.com/the Psychology World podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Con Wiley. So that's enough for the personality. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about what are false allegations. And before we dive into it, I just want to mention that the whole point of this podcast episode and this book is definitely not to imply that all allegations involving these crimes are false. This is not the message of the book at all. And time after time in this book, we are reminded about the true number of how many allegations are real. It is extremely rare for someone to lie about rape and other horrific crimes. So let's dive into it. This is an extract from the book. Kicking off the book and the forensic psychology of false allegations, we need to understand what these actually are before we can explore the psychology behind them. This is even more important when we consider that false allegations aren't really anything to do with psychology, so why are forensic psychologists still interested? That's what we'll explore in this first chapter. Therefore, false allegations are all about miscarriages of justice. Since if a false allegation is made, then this does have the potential to lead to a criminal investigation, court, and even a conviction based on a false allegation. As you'll see throughout this book, it is rarely that simple, but it can happen. As a result, a miscarriage of justice is rather difficult to define because the easiest definition we'll be using in this book is when an innocent person gets convicted for a crime they didn't commit. Now, on the surface, this does sound like a perfect definition, and in theory, it certainly is. But if we want to apply that definition to the real world, then we experience one problem after another. Since, whilst the miscarriage of justice is when a court of appeal overturns a conviction, Nagan 2005, this is important to know because miscarriages of justice are the result of false allegations. But overturned conviction doesn't always mean the person was believed to be innocent. A conviction could be overturned due to police mishandling evidence, a witness lied, or another of the whole range of factors. Therefore, as you start to notice, this is more of a legal question than a psychological question, but I promise you the link between psychology and miscarriage of justice is coming up soon. On the whole, it is very, very difficult to get a true rate of false allegations, as that depends on the definition being used. For example, a researcher or another person couldn't use all non-guilty verdicts to imply that a false allegation has occurred, when in reality all a non-guilty verdict means is that it was beyond reasonable doubt that the accused did not commit the crime. Another example that makes the truth very hard to know is that unfounded claims where no supporting evidence was found. These are different to false allegations because in false allegations no crime actually happens, but in unfounded claims an offence could happen but there is no evidence of it happening. And just stepping away from the blog post, that's what happened to me with my rape. The reason why I can't go to the police is because it would be classed as an unfounded claim. It happened, believe me, it did, but there's no evidence. I can't, I can't prove anything. I can't prove that what happened to me happened, which is so irritating. And before my mental health dips, I'm gonna get back to the blog post. And this is certainly why I like legal stuff, because it's so complex, but extremely interesting at the same time. In addition, recanted accusations aren't evidence that no offence occurred, because different people recant their statements for different reasons, including the reconciliation between partners. As well as, this is before we consider the clear difference between false allegations and false convictions. It is these differences that make a true rate of false allegations next to impossible to know. So, why are false allegations a problem, and why should we care? Why we need to care about false allegations? Of all the different types of false allegations, child sexual abuse is one of the most important areas, and this is the area where the most false allegations are made, as well as this is the focus of the book because it's such a heartbreaking, important, and unfortunate area of human behaviour. For example, Pohl and Lindsay, 1998, found that false allegations make up 5 to 8% of all child sexual abuse cases, and this only includes those cases that note intentional false allegations. Therefore, because it is only focusing on malicious motives behind the false allegations, this covers up a much, much greater number of child sexual abuse cases. Whereas other studies propose that false allegations make up between 23 and 35% of all cases. Howard, 1992. And I have to admit that at first this number sounds very high, but if we convert these percentages into real number, the numbers get very scary. If a police force had, let's say, 1,000 sexual abuse cases, according to these numbers, 230 to 350 of these cases would be false allegations. That would mean a hell of a lot of time, police resources, and emotional distress would be wasted just because someone decided to make a false allegation. And then my personal pet hate is those 350 fake cases would cast doubt on the millions of real ones. In addition, it is important to remember that in this book we will talk about a lot about numbers, but it's critical that we remember that behind each of these numbers is a ton of trauma, distress, and more negative experiences for the child and family. This is even more important when we consider that the consequences of false allegations include a child being removed from home, the father being made to live away from the home and imprisoned, and even well-intentioned false allegations can take a toll on family life. Howard, 1992. As well as false denials by victims of abuse can be equally as damaging. Leon, 1995. Overall, this is why it is of immense interest to psychologists, because someone making a false allegation, that is a human behaviour. Also, the consequences, the emotional trauma, and the pain that the child and family experience, they are all human behaviours, and considering psychologists are experts on the matter, that is why we are so critical to understand why this awful facet of human behaviour happened in the first place. But now, let's explore why a false allegation is so problematic for psychologists. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did because I wrote this book way before I was raped, I was really concerned about it. I was thinking, oh no, is this book completely wrong? Am I going to have massive self-doubt? Does this contain a message I don't want to repeat anymore because of research? And it's a case of no, but this book is still standing up for survivors and victims, and this book helps to share and enlighten why statements get recanted, why the police mess up, why the criminal justice system messes up. So yes, I'm still proud of this book, and me being raped doesn't change how I feel about this book, thankfully, which I'm very, very pleased with. So if you know someone who enjoyed today's episode and get something out of it, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And please check out Forensic Psychology False Allegations, available in all the usual places. And if you want to support the podcast on a monthly basis, now you can at patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. And if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Conor Whiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.